When we think of the book of Deuteronomy, we usually picture it as a purely religious text, right? A bunch of ancient laws, some sermons from Moses. But what if there's something else hiding in its pages, something way more radical? Today, we're going to look at Deuteronomy not just as scripture, but as a political document. An argument that, according to our source, is maybe the very first attempt in history to draw up a blueprint for a truly free society. Okay, let's get into it.
So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll lay out this core idea of Deuteronomy as a political blueprint. Then, we'll dig into the three big pillars that hold it all up, before we do a deep dive on this incredible concept called tzedakah. From there, we'll unpack the huge difference between justice and charity, look at some mind-blowing parallels to modern systems, and we'll finish up by asking a big question. Is social support better when it comes from the community or from the state?
And this is really the central idea for our whole discussion, and it's a huge one. I mean, think about it. In a world of empires, pharaohs, and all-powerful kings, a world where you were just a subject, the very idea of a society made of free, equal citizens was, well, it was almost unthinkable. This text wasn't just suggesting a few small tweaks, it was laying out a whole new vision for a nation that could govern itself with liberty and dignity for everyone. So let's keep that idea in mind as we go.
All right, let's look at that blueprint. The real meat of it is in the legal code you find between chapters 11 and 30. And this is not just some lists of don'ts. It's basically a constitution, a super detailed document that covers everything from civil and criminal law all the way to a social welfare system. And it's all built on principles that were absolutely revolutionary for their time.
So how in the world did this ancient blueprint plan to build such a radical society? Well, the argument is that the entire structure sits on three foundational pillars, and they all have to work together. It's the way these three ideas interact that creates this really unique political and social system.
Now, what's so fascinating here is the political tension it sets up. First, it says the individual is free. You have choice, you have responsibility. That's number one. But that freedom is immediately balanced by pillar number two. We are collectively responsible. You can almost see the early whispers of we the people here. This idea that the whole community is on the hook for what happens to every one of its members. And finally, to manage that constant push and pull between individual freedom and collective duty, you get the third pillar, the rule of law, not the rule of men. This divine legal code is above everyone, making sure the whole nation can actually govern itself with freedom and equal dignity.
To really get how this society works on the ground, we have to understand a key Hebrew word, tzedakah. You know how they say the untranslatable words in a language are the ones that reveal its deepest values? Tzedakah is one of those. It's a concept that just doesn't have a simple English equivalent, and it is the moral engine driving this entire social contract.
This passage is the classic explanation of tzedakah. And you really got to pay attention to the language. This isn't just a friendly suggestion to be nice. It's a command, with both a negative and a positive. Do not be hard-hearted, but rather be open-handed. And check out that very specific instruction. Lend him sufficient for his need. That part is so key. It's not about tossing someone a few coins, it's about restoring what they need to be whole. This establishes a duty for society, not just an optional act of kindness.
So what is tzedakah, exactly? Well, people often translate it as charity, or sometimes justice, but neither one really captures it. It's a fusion of both. It represents this absolute duty of a society to make sure every single person has what they need to live a life of dignity. And this idea directly challenges how Western thought often builds a wall between what we owe people as a right and what we might give them out of generosity.
Let's break that down a little more. Tzedakah really holds two kinds of justice inside it. On one side, you have retributive justice. That's the rule of law we all know. Courts, contracts, sorting out right and wrong. It's what makes a society stable. But on the other side, you have distributive justice, and this is all about social equity, the moral duty to make sure a society's resources are shared in a way that allows everyone to live with dignity. Tzedakah says these aren't two separate things. It argues you can't really have one without the other. A stable legal system and a compassionate social system have to go hand in hand.
And this fusion of concepts inside tzedakah, well, it helps solve a classic problem, especially in Western thinking, that really sharp line we tend to draw between justice and charity. The source uses this simple but brilliant example. Let's say I give you $100. You're either entitled to it or you're not. If you worked for it, me paying you is justice. If you didn't, and I just give it to you, that's charity. It's a gift. One is a duty, the other is a choice. But tzedakah argues this whole way of thinking is a false choice because it starts from a totally different idea about what it means to own something in the first place. And here it is. This is the absolute game changer. In the worldview of Deuteronomy, you don't actually have ultimate ownership over your stuff, your money, your property, anything. It all belongs to God, and you are just its caretaker, holding it in trust. And that one idea just flips the whole thing on its head. Helping someone in need is no longer charity. It becomes an act of justice. You're not giving away your stuff. You are simply moving a divine resource to where it needs to go, doing your duty as a trustee.
Okay, so we've got the philosophy down. But how did this look in real life? I mean, Deuteronomy didn't just talk about principles, it actually designed specific systems to make them happen. And what's wild is how these ancient systems echo in some of our biggest, most heated debates today. So one of the most radical examples is the Jubilee cycle. Just try to imagine this. Every 7th year, the entire economy just hits a reset button. All debts are wiped clean, anyone who became an indentured servant is freed, and, this is huge, any ancestral land that had to be sold because of hard times goes back to the original family. This was a built-in system to prevent wealth from getting stuck at the top and to stop a permanent underclass from forming. It basically guaranteed every generation could get a fresh start.
And this is where you can really see the parallels. Now, these aren't perfect one-to-one matches, of course, but the core idea, the function, is similar. The Jubilee's debt cancellation has the same basic goal as modern bankruptcy laws, giving people a path back from financial ruin. The duty of tzedakah to provide for basic needs, that's the core principle behind social welfare programs. And the bigger goal of redistributing resources to prevent permanent poverty shares an aim with things like unemployment insurance, and, as the source points out, even with broader ideas like socialism that try to level the economic playing field.
Okay, this brings us to our final and maybe the most critical point here. We've talked about the what and the why of this system. But what about the who? Who's actually supposed to run this whole system of social support? Is it the community or is it the state? See, the Deuteronomy model is just fundamentally different from a modern welfare state. The responsibility for tzedakah wasn't handed off to a central government or a king. It was baked right into the culture itself, run by the community. It was all about personal relationships and local bonds. Compare that to modern state systems. They can offer huge scale and consistency, sure, but they run on policy and bureaucracy, and the source suggests there's a real trade-off there. They can become super impersonal, and people risk just getting lost in the system without that human touch.
And that really gets to the heart of it. The ultimate goal isn't just to keep people alive, it's to restore their dignity. Tzedakah is as much about psychological needs as it is about physical ones. Remember that phrase, sufficient for his need and that which he lacks? The ancient sages took that to mean you have a duty to help someone get back to their previous standard of living, not just to a baseline for survival. And that's why meaningful work is valued so highly. It gives people back their agency and self-respect in a way that just being dependent can't. It connects them right back to that first pillar of freedom and responsibility.
This line from the traditional Jewish grace said before meals isn't just a prayer. It's a powerful cultural and political statement. It perfectly captures this whole idea. The deepest wish is to be self-sufficient, to rely only on God, and specifically to avoid the shame and humiliation that can come from being dependent on other people. It just hammers home that the entire system was designed to be a temporary support, meant to empower people, not create a permanent state of dependency.
And so we are left with this question. It's at the heart of Deuteronomy's ancient blueprint, and it's at the heart of our most urgent debates today. If we want to build a truly just society, one that honors every person's freedom and dignity, where do we put our energy? Do we focus on building a compassionate, responsible culture from the ground up? Or do we focus on designing a comprehensive, well-funded state from the top down? Deuteronomy gives its radical answer, but for us, the challenge of answering that question is as real as ever.